Hey everybody, it's Crystal, and this is a new tutorial video that is going up for my residential interior design studio. This is going to cover how to print a 2D drawing from AutoCAD and then take it into Photoshop and render it in Photoshop. And this is really helpful for getting a little more of a dynamic rendered two-dimensional drawing so it doesn't look too flat. I've got a couple of tricks I can show you with layers. If you are joining us from the internet, welcome. Otherwise, this is diverting a little bit from our usual string of 3D Studio Max tutorials, and this might be helpful for all of you who are trying to get some renderings out of 2D views. So to start with, I've got CAD open here, and I wanted to show you guys how to print, just grab a quick drawing, maybe even, not even with a scale, out of model space in AutoCAD instead of just paper space. A lot of you guys in class were talking about how you're not sure how to even print from this view here. You're just used to paper space. So I wanted to show you how to grab this really quickly, because when we're rendering sections, sometimes they're in scale and sometimes they aren't. If they have dimensions, it's important that you print it to scale, but you can still do that from this view. So I just wanted to show you how to do this, and for this exercise, I'm not going to print this to scale. But if you have a scale set or you have a required scale from me, then make sure you print it to scale. So I've got this little elevation here, and I'm going to show you how to print. If you go up here and you go to print, just say no if it gives you that warning. Drop down to PDF, whatever PDF maker you have, if it's Adobe or if it's something else. I'm going to do mine at 11 by 17 because I've got a really long section here. But this is where you can choose the paper size. So this really kind of depends on the scale. For me, it's not going to matter because I'm not doing it to scale, but you will have to adjust your paper size to allow this to fit when you do it to scale. And I'll show you how to do that. But right here, go to plot, drop this down, go to window, and you get this little cursor here. If you click and drag over your drawing, and then click again, you can set the window of what you're printing. So you can just make a window around your drawing. I always like to center it. You can see here it's being centered on the paper. And then here's where you can change the scale. If you don't want it to just be fit to the paper, you can uncheck that and click a scale. So if I did 1/8, it would be really tiny on this big piece of paper. But you can do all sorts of scales in here. 1/4 inch would fit really well. Actually, maybe I'll do that. But use whatever required scale you have, and then you can adjust the paper size accordingly. If it's too big, it'll show you red lines. So see here, it's going to exceed the paper on those ends, and so you can adjust the paper size to make sure that the scale is fitting the paper that you're printing on, if that makes sense. So if I did 1/4 scale, we'd be looking at that. So I'll show you that. Let's assume I'm doing 1/4. This is really important right here. If you don't see this menu, it's because this is not clicked. So if you click this, you get more options here. Some of you guys have been bringing me drawings and they have colored, they show your colored layer lines. So what you need to do is drop down this menu and make sure that monochrome.ctb is the selected plot style. You can say yes. This will print it in grayscale, but the lines will be weighted relative to the properties of your layers. So if a line weight's supposed to be really deep, it will be, and if it's supposed to be lighter, it will be. So you can preview what that's going to look like here. So if I zoom in, I can see that I've got different line weights that I've taken all this time to set up with layers, and it just reads really nicely. So if I like this, I can hit this print button right here, and it will start to print it to PDF. I'm just going to say sample elevation and save this to my desktop, so you guys just save this wherever you want. And then you should get a nice little elevation. Okay, so you can exit this if it pulls it up. And then you're going to open up Photoshop, so I'll give you some time to do that. But if you're here and you already got it open, we need to create a new file that is the same size as the drawing we just made. So one little trick with Photoshop, especially when you're dealing with scale, is that if you make a new file that doesn't have the same DPI, it's, dots per inch, set as the PDF drawing, then it will make the paper larger than your drawing, and it's not going to fit correctly, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I go to File, New, we're going to make a new document. Change pixels to inches. Width, let's make this 17, and height 11, because that was the paper size that I did. And let's change resolution to 150 dpi, pixels per inch. Make sure your RGB background is white, and say OK. Now go up here to File, Place, and find your elevation file. Say Place. You're going to get this little dialog. It's going to show you a little baby preview, what it looks like, and ask you some questions here. Just leave all the defaults and say OK. It will almost always place this in the wrong direction. So a good little trick to know is how to rotate this with an orthographic lock so that you're not getting a rotation that isn't straight. So by default, we've got this little rotational cursor going on here. So if you hold down the Shift key and then click and drag your mouse, you can rotate this and see how it's locking. It'll lock to a 90-degree rotation and say OK. So the importance of this right now is to know that this came in at scale. So I don't want to scale this drawing up at all, because if I'm trying to keep it to scale, if I adjust this, I'll show you what I mean. If I adjust this size like this, I take it out of scale. So what I want to do is keep it in scale. So if you bring it in and you've already set up for the paper and everything and it looks tiny, that's fine. You know, let's assume you were doing other things on this sheet. I probably, you know, I would never present a drawing this tiny on this big piece of paper. But just know that this is in scale right now. So if you were to print this out, this would be at the 1/4 inch scale that I printed to. So be sure that if you're trying to stay in scale, that you're not adjusting the size of this image. All right. So it looks a little fuzzy from here, and that's fine. We got to zoom in and out a lot during this process. So you can hit Control and then the plus sign to zoom in, and then the Control minus sign to zoom out. So that's a really fun, quick hotkey to be able to zoom in and out in Photoshop. So we've got a nice little elevation here. Is what we want to render. So our first layer here is the drawing that we've added to this white sheet. And we're going to keep, layers are really, really important in this exercise. So always keep an eye on this and try to remember to name your layers, because you will get lost if you don't. And I am really bad about naming layers, so I'm not one to talk. But I'm warning you that this will get a little crazy. So try to stay on top of your layers and see what you can do. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you may know this, but I'm going to just kind of cover everything here. If you see this little image down at the bottom right-hand corner of this layer, that is kind of like a smart image or something. Usually when you bring in images and you place them, it comes with this little object on the lower right-hand corner. We need to rasterize layers that show that symbol in order to edit them as much as I'm going to try to edit them in this tutorial. So if you right-click, there's a rasterize layer option, and that goes away. So essentially, if you're trying to do something to a layer and it's not letting you, if you're trying to delete something or select something with the magic wand or use the paintbrush or the paint bucket and it's giving you like a cross out, no, you can't do this signal, that is because it's not rasterized. And so you need to right click, hit rasterize, and then you can edit it fully. Okay, so that's always kind of my first step with a lot of these layers. And some layers they don't need to rasterize because I'm not editing them down any further. But that's just something to keep in mind. Alright, so I'm going to start with something simple here. I'm going to zoom in on this little bathtub area. The shower area is a little more complicated, but for now, right now, I'm going to show you how to paint this back wall, how to maybe get a window in here. These are wood shelves. Just kind of how to handle this area, and then I'll show you a few tricks in this cabinetry, this closet, that should give you a pretty good idea of how to handle doing sections in general. So first thing, I want to paint this back wall. So you'll notice in this tutorial that I like to grab real images of as much as I can. So if I go to Sherwin-Williams, and let's say I'm using mink, it's one of my favorite colors from Sherwin-Williams. Let's say I want that actual paint color. I'm going to use my snipping tool. If you're on a PC, this is a little tool. Otherwise, you should be able to do Control, I believe it's Control-Alt-4 or Control-Shift-4 on a Mac to cut this little cursor thingy. I'm not sure. Mac users, correct me. But I'm just going to snip a little image of this color, and I'm just going to save it to my desktop here. So this is a fun trick for using a paint color or a specific color that maybe you can't custom make here in Photoshop, but you really need in a scene. So I'm going to use the paint bucket to paint this back wall, but I need to have the program understand what this mink color looks like. So I'm going to go up to File, Place, click on Mink, and it's going to come in here. I'm going to hit this check mark to accept it, and it's going to place my paint color right here. Now all I need to do is steal this color from this image, and then I'll just use it in a paint bucket because it's going to be a lot easier than dealing with this actual image. So there is a little paint dropper tool right here. If you click on that and then you click on that color, it will adopt that color in Photoshop. So I can take this layer, click it, and drag it down to the trash can and just get rid of it now because I can use that color now in my paint bucket. So I'm going to click on my paint bucket, make sure I'm clicked on sample elevation, and click on that wall area back there. And then I can quickly paint my walls with the exact color that I want. So that's a really quick way to handle that, and it gives you the opportunity to really get, you know, any color you need. Okay, so let's say these are wood shelves here. I'm going to search for walnut wood. I always search for things in terms of texture, walnut wood texture, because we get nice images. So if you go to the images here, you can get some nice clear images. I kind of want like an end grain look, so I'm thinking something like this. Click on this, and you can either right click to save this image, or you can use snipping tool. I like to use snipping for a lot of things, and I don't know why my computer's being glitchy here. Sorry about this. Let me click on it again. There we go. Alright. So I'm going to snip this. Just get a chunk of it, save it to my desktop as walnut, say okay. This is pretty nice too. Maybe I like that better. I'm going to save that one maybe. Let me snip it actually. It's just a little brighter, so I think I like it better. Alright. So you'll notice that I do File, Place for almost everything. It just allows us to control these textures and colors like individual layers, which means we can add shadows and glow and all these different things. So we come up to File, Place, Walnut. It's massive, so that's fun. You can hit Control and the minus sign to get out. Now, if you want to scale something down when you're in this mode, anytime you place an object, it gives you the mode to resize it or rotate it before you accept it up here. If you hold down Shift and resize, it will resize it uniformly, if you see what I mean, if you're holding Shift. So if I don't hold Shift, it's a freeform resize, which is fine, but if you want to keep it pretty even, and then hit OK. So I like to get it down to a manageable size and then zoom back in. And then Control T gets you back to the resize. So I'm going to resize it again. Now, I'm only uniformly resizing because that's natural to me, and I like to kind of uniformly resize until I don't have to anymore. So I'm going to get this as close to the size of that shelf as possible. Now, in moving things around in Photoshop, I like to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge them. So sometimes you can't quite see well, or you're just a little bit off of something, so you can use the arrow keys like this to nudge it into place, whereas your mouse might take it a little too far. So if I zoom out, see a little wood texture there. Now, 150 DPI isn't super high quality. Sometimes 300 is better. So you're welcome to do that. But as far as I know, PDFs print to 150 DPI. So just to keep your scale the same and not to mess anything up, it might be smart to do that. So hopefully if this were printed out, it wouldn't look this grainy, because 150 is still pretty good DPI. So anyway, we've got a little walnut shelf here. So I'm going to double click on this layer and name it Walnut Shelf Top. Okay, I'm going to right click on this and rasterize it, and then I'm going to right click on it again and say duplicate layer. I'm going to name it Walnut Shelf Middle, say OK. My layer comes here. I'm going to use the move tool because it just duplicated that right on top of the other shelf. I'm going to use my little nudge tools to get that into place. I'm going to right click, duplicate layer, Walnut Shelf Bottom. It stacks it on here. Layers are always going to stack on the top. If you want to move layers under each other, which becomes very important, and I'll show you how, you just drag them. I'll show you. But we just made this, and remember it's duplicated, so we can use the move tool again to bring this down. And we get little end grains of shelves, which looks nice, but it's a little flat. So one thing I like to do is add a little drop shadow that's maybe casting on this wall over here. So if I go back to the first one, first walnut shelf top, go up to Image, Adjustments, sorry, not Adjustments, Layer Style, Drop Shadow. A couple things in here. Blend Mode Multiply is fine for us for now. I was playing with this earlier, so the shadow is actually exactly where I want it to be. But you can change opacity. If you turn it up, your shadow is going to get darker. If you turn it down a little bit, it's going to get softer. I want this one a little bit soft because the shelf isn't right up against this wall. It's not going to be super black, so this helps it look a little more natural and refined. Distance, you can send it way far away, which doesn't really make sense, but if you need to, you can. Size, you know how big it needs to be. So I have 5 and 5 here, and maybe we'll take this opacity to 60. And I'm going to turn off use global light. So when you have that on, all your shadows are going to cast the same way. That's pretty smart when you're doing kind of an elevation that is sunlight dependent. You want to make sure all your shadows are casting the same way, because it wouldn't make sense for them to cast all different directions if the sun was coming in from one position. So you can click use global light, and then anytime you change this on an object, all the shadows in the scene would change. But in doing a really detailed kind of work on an elevation or a section like this, a lot of these things are touching other items or need a little drop shadow just to add some depth, and they're not all needing to go the same way. So I turn this off so that I can individually control these shadows. Okay, so say okay there. So one really, really cool thing, instead of having to go through and do this for every single shelf, you can actually copy a layer's effect and add it to other layers. So if you right click on the drop shadow and say copy layer style, and then click on walnut shelf middle, right click and say paste layer style, and it will add it. Same thing here, click on walnut shelf bottom, right click, say paste layer style, and it will add it. Just like that. So you've got a little bit of depth here. They feel like they're floating. It's giving us a little more character. Cool. So let's say I wanted this trim to be like a black paint down here, this base trim, and you see it's running behind this bathtub. So I'm going to show you a really cool trim technique where we can use the actual CAD elevation to help us delete out lines so we don't have to hand cut this right here and have it look jagged and crappy. So let's go back here and do, like, I think peppercorn is a, yeah, let's do peppercorn. Or whatever you want. I'm going to do peppercorn. So I'm going to snip this color. Now, instead of using the paint bucket, I'm actually going to make an object with this. So let's save this. Alright, so I'm going to File, Place, Peppercorn. For now, I'm just going to accept this so I can name my layer, and I'm going to name this Bathroom Base Trim. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to rasterize it because we're going to edit it. Now I'm going to move this. I'm going to do Control T, and I'm going to drag it to there because that's where the base trim ends, and this starts a tile threshold into the shower. I'm going to drag it down to the height of the base roughly. Okay, accept it up there with that check mark. Now I need to cut the shape of this tub out of this trim. So there's a really easy way to do this. If you go down to Sample Elevation, click on that layer, go to your Magic Selection wand over here. If you don't see it, you have to hold it, click and hold down. It might be on Quick Selection tool. Make sure you're on Magic Wand. Click on the bathtub. Now since we're in the elevation, it's going to grab the tub shape in our line drawing. I'm going to go back up to Bathroom Base Trim, click on that layer while this is selected, and hit the delete key. And it will just delete that out for us. Now to deselect this part of the tub, because we don't want to click and drag around or anything, it will actually remove this part of the drawing. Hit Control D, as in dog, and that will deselect. So there's our base trim, and then we've got these nice smooth lines for the tub. It's looking pretty sharp. So I want to add a little shadow line against this wall here. It's looking a little flat. So layer style. Let's do drop shadow. Now I don't want global light, remember, so we can control this because we don't want it to do this. I'm going to drag this around. I think I just go straight up there. Now that's where I want the shadow line, but it's a little dramatic because it's coming in here. So I'm going to do like 2 for the distance and 2 for the spread. Let's see how that goes. Maybe I'll turn my darkness up a little bit here and just do 1 for the distance. Just play with this until you find what you want. I am going to add a material on top of this tub to make it look kind of like a glossy white tub, but I don't want this to get too crazy, so maybe just a subtle line there. You can play with those to your liking. Just say okay. So at this point I would save if I were you. I'm not going to because I don't need this file later, but you definitely should. Okay, so if I really honestly Google image everything. Glossy white material. Let's see if I can find an image. So maybe kind of like this actually. I'm going to snip this here. Maybe. You don't have to be as crazy as I am with grabbing real images. I just think it helps things look pretty great towards the end. So I'm just going to say glossy white. And this is like the scale of a tile right now, but I'm going to stretch this over the scale of the tub and see how it looks. So I'm going to file, place my glossy white. Woo! It's big. So I'm going to resize this. Oops. Don't do what I did. Hold down shift if you want to scale uniformly. Just keep clicking and dragging to move that. And I'm just going to stretch this over the tub. Now, I'm going to right click on this and rasterize it because I'm going to edit it. But what I do like to do is change the opacity of this layer. So if you go up here where it says 100, you can change it to like 50 and see the tub behind it. So we can actually see what we're working with. This helps because if I want to move this material down a little bit so I get that glossy reflection maybe, that might be nice right there. Or if I want it at the bottom, I can move it up here. You know, I can kind of see it just enough to work with it. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing here. If I go to sample elevation, use my magic wand, I'm going to click on the tub. Now this is a little different than what we just did where we deleted it out. What we're going to do instead is we're going to click on the glossy white material and we're going to copy and paste it, but it's going to grab this shape from the material. So I'm going to do Control C and then Control V. Okay? Now I'm going to grab glossy white here and delete it, drag it down the trash can because we don't need it, and we've got a glossy white on our tub. So I'm going to double click this where it says layer 1 and say glossy white tub. So there you go, you've got a glossy little tub. Looks really nice. It would be kind of hard to develop that in Photoshop otherwise. I'm happy with it. A lot of times I like to zoom out and kind of take a look at how things are showing up. I'm happy with it so far. So let's say I want chrome here. I'm going to do, again, chrome material. Let's see. See if we can get it on like a flat. Good luck. Probably not. Let's see. Chrome tub faucet. These aren't tub faucets. Oh my goodness. Alright, hey, but then I see things like this, and I'm like, alright, this little section right here could work, because, yeah, that's convincing. So let's say I go snipping, and I grab just this piece. You can steal from a lot of things out in the world, I'm telling you. I'm going to do that again. So let's say I want this chrome. It's more of a stainless steel, but whatever. Alright, I'm going to place this one just like we've been doing, and I'm going to put this on my faucet. A little tub filler here. So I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of nudge this into place and then resize it. And I'm going to move this under the tub. So this is an example of scooting layers around to make sure they show up in the right spot. So click this and drag it down under the tub just so that the tub is covering that little edge where the filler meets. Now if you want to get real refined, you can come in here, click on the, well, we can turn the chrome opacity down. We can come in here and see if it'll let us grab that line in between. You know, it's a little tricky. But you can delete out maybe a little tiny line like this between these chrome pieces. Oh, see, it says it's not editable because I didn't rasterize it. If I right click, rasterize it, and hit delete. Let me see. Turn this back up to 100 and zoom out. Kind of looks like a tub filler. So all I did was grab this selection box, this selection rectangle here, and I just click and drag over the chrome material to make that little line, and then hit delete to delete it out of there, just to give it a nice little seam. Okay. Now with these windows, sometimes I will get real cheap with this. I don't even remember what I searched for this, but I wanted windows. This is a nice one too, actually. Sometimes you can just search, like, you know, the style window you want. You can find some really nice, these are great. These would be great to integrate into your rendering. I'm sort of in love with this one because it's got buildings outside, but it's a little bit skewed. So I might keep shopping around. I can't grab this whole window, though I would love to use this one. I can't grab it. This one I could potentially use because the lower right side of my window is going to be covered by a bathtub. So maybe I'll snip this out. It's not the highest quality, so you know, I don't totally recommend it because you really want to try to get something that's a high resolution so it doesn't look weird next to everything else in your file. But I'm going to use this just as an example. So I'm going to snip that. File, place, window. And I'm going to do just like we've been doing. I'm going to resize this and drag it over my window space here in my drawing. Now because I already have a tub, it threw this in underneath my tub here, so I don't have to worry about deleting that. It's just going to hide behind my tub layer, which is kind of nice. So there's a window, which is pretty cool. I'm going to right click on this, rasterize it. I'm going to add some inner shadow because we want it to look like it's set into the wall here. So layer, layer style, inner shadow. There you go. So I'm going to make this 100. I'm not going to use global light. Make this 100. Maybe give it a little bit, I don't know, more distance and size. Up to you. That looks good. Alright. I want to duplicate this so I can use the exact same one on the other side. So I'm going to right click on window, duplicate layer, say OK, and then click and drag it over here. Perfect. Looking pretty snazzy. So that's a really good start for you've already learned quite a few things for how to do this in Photoshop. I will show you a few more techniques over here, but for things like subway tile, you really should check out textures.com. It's the website I teach a lot about in my 3D Max course because they have wonderful, seamless materials, so you can get a lot. You know, you may not find what you're looking for certain, like, really specific things, but I mean, they've got all of these different categories, and you can find, you know, a lot of stuff. I don't know if they have like subway tiles in here. Actually, I haven't been here for that lately, but you know, they do. So you might want to search in here because there are just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of really nice textures. You might find something close to what you want, and you can download that material and stretch it into your rendering, and it looks really nice. They have brick, they have wood. Those are my favorite ones from this site, are the brick and the wood, because they're just so nice. You can check this seamless textures only box, and it will give you only seamless textures. So if you need to tile it, you know, if you need to continue it over and over again, it can keep repeating without seeing any seams, which is really nice. So yeah, definitely take a look through here. You do want to make an account. It's free to make an account, and you get 15, I believe it is, free downloads per day. So definitely check this out. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. You can get a lot. So check this out. See if there's anything. You can snip them or download them just like we've been doing here. And it works really well. So for cabinetry, I want to show you something here. So this is a little closet, a little walk-in closet. These are, we're looking at the ends. These are big end panels, so they're just solid. This is a little crown molding up here, or solid stock molding up at the top. These are mirrors, technically, and these are little benches, and then this sticks out and has frosted glass doors. So I'm just going to show you this middle part here for a second, but keep in mind everything that we did over here. You know, with these mirrors, I would probably Google like a mirror image and stick it in there, and then add like an inner shadow to set it back to recess it in space, because these are forward and these are set back. But for cabinetry, I go to waypointliving-spaces.com because I work with this cabinetry a lot just with clients in general, but they have really nice quality images of their cabinetry. So if you're on this site, you can go to kitchen and bath cabinets and pick something from here. And I'm on painted stone. But what's nice about this is if you have some detail to your door like this, you know, you can just snip it and use it, and it looks really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and snip this bottom door here. I'm just going to grab the door, save it, and then File, Place, downsize this just like we've been doing. Now technically this should have a toe kick, but don't worry about it. For now, I'm just going to stick this on here. And again, you know, take your time. I'm kind of moving through this pretty quick, but you know, make sure things are lining up and you know where you want them. And then I'm going to right click on gray door to duplicate that to get the second door over here. So it's just a really nice way to get texture to your section or your elevation without having to do much, so you don't have to obsess over drawing those details in CAD. And like, even if you know, took the time to draw all of this detail, it seems kind of like a, you know, redundancy to cover it up with these images, but it's not, you know, because you'll eventually need a 2D CAD set, and that's fine. And it's nice to have that detail, but in the elevation it's nice because these shadows and stuff are already built in for us, and if we were doing these with like a, you know, the paint bucket, it wouldn't be as effective. So in here, one more thing that I want to do is I want to snip just this solid gray area, because I'm going to need to make, I'll show you, just snip a solid wood or solid gray, whatever. I want to fill in these little lines here with that gray, and then I'm going to subtract out these squares because those are supposed to be frosted glass. So basically what we can do is throw on a big solid gray panel, subtract out all these little squares, and slide a frosted glass image behind that. So I'll show you. If we place that solid gray, oops. Again, I'm holding Control T, holding Shift to keep that uniformly scaling. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to right click on, well, let's rename it. Let's just say, oops, solid gray with doors. I'm going to right click and rasterize. And then I'm going to turn this down to like 50% the opacity because I need to be able to see these little, where these mullions are dividing the glass here. And I'm going to go down to Sample Elevation. It's our original CAD file. Click on the selection wand. Click on one of those squares, and I'm going to hold down Shift because that's going to allow us to make multiple selections if you see that little plus sign next to the wand. So I'm going to click these. Hit delete to delete them out. Then I'm going to go up to my solid gray with doors. Oops, I did that wrong. I'm the worst. Don't do that. Okay. My concern here is because the resolution's low, it's grabbing that mullion right there. I'm going to hit Control D to deselect for a second. See if it can let me. No. Let's just give it a shot. It wants to grab everything, which I don't like. You can try zooming in to make it not do that. Nope, it's gonna do it. Well. Let's delete. Let's just try it anyway. Alright. Let's see. Typically, we do it this way, but because of the resolution, it's grabbing the mullions, and that's not really what I want. So what we can do is use this rectangle selection tool and drag select over that whole door. We can go up to the solid gray with doors and hit delete. Then do the same thing for each one of these. Delete. 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 And then Control D to deselect. And then let's turn this back up to 100. Okay, so that's filling that little area around the mullions here. And then if I go to, if I search for frosted glass material, I can get something like this. Would be great. So let's just grab that. Actually, snip this so it saves to the same spot. Alright. So let's place this, and it's huge, so I'm going to zoom out. So I'm going to size this over those, and then hit OK, and then I'm going to click and drag this under the solid gray with doors. And so that's pretty close to what we want, but we do want to see the mullions, so at least this is over that. And I might, I might cut a little piece out of this to make these even, or, edit that down a little more. But let's take this frosted glass to 50%, or maybe 60%, and you can still see those little mullions. So get the effect of frosted glass in here, but you can still see those. So that's a good way to handle that. Yeah, so that's how you do that. And then, for these upper pieces of trim, I might place this solid gray here and resize it, to match that trim. Make sure it's at the top of the stack now that it's going on top of everything else. Just get this into place. And then, add a shadow to it, because probably a little shadow line here. So image, layer, layer style, maybe inner shadow, and make sure that preview is clicked on this whole time so you can always see what I'm seeing here. I'm not going to use global light. I'm going to rotate this around so the shadow line is there. Distance I'm going to make like 1. And size probably real small. Just so you get a little shadow line up there. Okay, so that is how I like to render sections or elevations in Photoshop. I think it just gives it a lot of class, and it looks really nice. A lot of times too, once you finish, you can do a save as on this and save it as a JPEG file or a TIFF file, just basically an image file, to condense all of these layers. Make sure you save it as a Photoshop file as well, so you can come in and edit this if you need to. But you can do a save as and save it as an image file, and then reopen it and do some editing to it, add some effects or some softness or whatever. One other important thing to note is that you can easily smooth out some edges by using this little blur tool right here. After you save this as an image file, I'm not going to be able to do it here yet, but after you save it as an image file, you can come in and blur some of these edges to smooth them out, make them look a little bit less like they're little pieces of collaged images set over each other. So yeah, that's a good start. So definitely try it with yours. Give all those different techniques a shot. Consider different ways to do paint and layering and material, and maybe consider using as many real-world materials as possible just to keep this looking a little more dynamic. Rendering a plan is the same exact way, just a little easier. You're going to lay down, things like wood, and when you have fabric for textures, you just lay that over the whole item, and then you can copy and paste to get it the exact shape of the furniture. So yeah, give it a try, and see you in the next video.